Hey there, Nation, and welcome to the show where we help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander Cheapskate, and welcome to Season 2 of Meat for the Grinder, our series dedicated to Necromunda Dark Uprising Battle Reports. Meat for the Grinder is a Necromunda campaign set in the final days of Hive Arcos, where Chaos, Xenos, and Order clash for control of a collapsing Hive City. And before we actually get into Battle Report number 13, I wanted to show you the campaign information for our third week of our Dark Uprising campaign. We're now currently in Cycle 3 of the Insurrection phase, and as you can see, this is the current layout with the tables about what's going on during this campaign week. As you can see, all 9 of our gangs have been listed up in the front, with the Children of the Deep Fry of House Caldor, played by my little sister the Kiddo, from the Alignment of Order, actually taking the lead. She's got 17 points of reputation, and then of course we have our gang ratings associated to the right hand side with our win and loss records. The Children of the Deep Fry are first place. The Lords of the Pit, the newly arrived Scavy gang, played by my friend Senior Chang, is in second place. Yours truly, my gang, the Bloodmoon Hunters of the Venators, is in third place. In fourth place are the Blooded of the Hellot Chaos Cults, played by my little sister Shade. And fifth place are the Death Watch of the Orcs, played by Iron Major. Sixth place is Precinct 13 of the Paladin Enforcers, played by my friend sister Serial. In seventh place we have Aqua Cola, the Chaos Corrupted Water Guild Outcast gang. In eighth place we have Soylent Green of the Corpse Grinder Cults, played by Dark Lord Mac. And in ninth place we have the Red Faction of the Gene Stealer Cults, played by Scream of the Emo. Now, because of the events that took place in our last campaign cycle, Chaos is in ascendancy in this battle report in this current campaign week, and so for the effects for this one is called Gnawing Hunger, which means that after selecting crews, players, if we're in the insurrection phase as we are, will you choose randomly one of your fighters in your roster. That fighter actually has one less strength characteristic to represent the fact that they're being starving because of the corrupting powers of Chaos in this campaign week. At the same time, we also have Fleeting to Utopia as our campaign event, which means that you actually get double the rewards from territories that you control in terms of things like the number of fighters you recruit as well. So our gangs are going to be quite large during this week because of that fact. And this is basically the overall campaign setting for this. We are currently at week number 3. So that being said, let's go and get started with our very first battle report of week 3 in our campaign, which is fought between my gang, the Venators, versus the Corpse Grinder Cults. So on today's episode on Battle Report number 13, Soylent Green of the Corpse Grinder Cults, played by my buddy Dark Lord Mac, will fight against my Venator gang, the Bloodmoon Hunters, in a slaughter scenario to the death. So just in case of Mark Morrison's Return of the Mac did not give that away, Dark Lord Mac and I will be throwing it down for the first time ever in our campaign, which is really exciting. I love playing as Dark Lord Mac. He's a really good buddy of mine, and we've been going back and forth almost since the beginning of this channel, so I'm really looking forward to this fight, especially if you look at the map that you can see behind the in the background. We're actually fighting in a sump type battle, where basically the floor is kind of like the sump, and if you fall into it, you automatically go out of action. So the initiative checks are going to be extremely important in this battle report as well. So that being said, we're going to play some background music real quick. As the music is playing, we will show you photos of both gang rosters. If you want to see exactly what we're bringing for this battle report, go ahead and pause, take a look at your leisure. So that being said, let's get this battle report on a roll.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dying times here.
So the scenario rules for this one is Slaughter. Basically, you both get D3 plus 7 randomly chosen fighters to actually fight in this scenario. And what we have going on is what's called the Bloodless rules. Demonic Fury is saturating the entirety of the battlefield. All ranged attacks suffer a -2 to hit modifier whenever you take a range action. If you decide to shoot in this battle report, you need to pass a willpower check as well. At the same time, whenever a fighter activates, you must roll a 2d6 and add your strength of that fighter. If the total is 10 or more, they must either charge the nearest enemy if possible, or use both of their actions to get as close as possible to the nearest enemy. If you roll a 14 or higher, then they will automatically charge the closest fighter, friend or foe, and they do not care, and they'll actually fight for those guys as well. Now, of course, if there's nobody in range, they automatically do some self-harm type of thing, and they actually go out and they have to roll injury dice to see exactly what ends up happening for them. Now, for the victory conditions of this one, of course, that any fighter that has at least one gang as fire left on the battlefield is the winner on this one. For rewards, you earn 1 point of experience for participating in the battle report. You also get 1 experience bonus point if you take an enemy out with a melee weapon. At the same time, any fighter that's still left on the battlefield at the end of the gang also earns an additional experience point. When it comes to reputation, victorious gangs earn D3 reputation, while if any gang bottles out, they lose 1 point of reputation. So with the scenario rules over with, let's go ahead and talk about deployments. So up first for my deployment, the far left-hand side, of course, we have my fighter Alicia Winter. She's a hunter specialist. She's actually deployed here on the left-hand side. In the center of my deployment area, of course, I have Tiberius Cage, as well as UR-025, my Iron Automata, as well as Klim's Tombstone, another one of my hunters. And taking point on the left-hand side is Shroom, followed by Helios Hex. Right behind them on the right-hand side, of course, we have Crack Orc Slayer, as well as Endithor Onyx Blade. I also got my 2 newly recruited hunters, which are Lobo Loomis, as well as Shem Basaya. And that makes up my deployment for this part of the battle report. On the other side of the battlefield, of course, deployed on the left-hand side, we have 2 fighters. In the back, that is Griver there in the front. That's a Butcher, and right behind him is Rictus, which is a Cutter, which is one of the champions for this gang. In Dark Lord Max Centers, where most of his gang is deployed, up in the back, of course, we have Motionless in White, which is the Butcher. We also have the Toe Cutter, which is Skinner's armed with a chain glaive. And taking point, of course, we have another fighter named Molek as well. We also have the Crucifier, who's also armed with his harpoon launcher, and on the right-hand side of the bottom here, we got Death Wears a Smile, which is a Skinner. Followed right behind is another one named Corpus Colossus, which is a Cutter. And finally, on the far right-hand side, on top of that newly created Sniper's Perch that was built by our local terrain wizard, Iron Major. In the back, that character, of course, is the 8-fold Harvest Lord. Up at the front is a Warp Horror as well. And the reason why they have a Warp Horror in this gang is because of underdog rules. I am actually outclass the Corpse Grinder cults by at least 400 points. So because of that, he decided to take an additional Brute to his game to kind of balance out the skills, and therefore he wanted to have a Warp Horror. So that being said, we go directly to the top of turn number 1, and both Dark Mac and I roll off for initiative to see which of us will be going first. So we go directly to the top of turn number 1, and I managed to get the initiative on this one, so I will be going first in this battle report. Before we actually get into the depth of the battle report, I want you to pay attention to the battlefield. As you can see, we have this lime green, acidic looking chemical base on the battleground, as you can see there, with all these structures rising up about it. The idea for this battle report is we decided to give ourselves a little bit of a challenge, but make it look like the sump has actually risen up in this part of the map. So if you fall indirectly into the sump bottom, you actually automatically go out of action. You have to roll to see exactly what happens to you as well. So the initiative checks are going to be extremely important in this battle report as well. Just kind of like a neat little kind of challenge we added to ourselves. Plus, it contrasts quite nicely with all the urban decayed ruins and stuff that we have on the battlefield. And once again, all the terrain that you see on this battlefield is once again made by our resident terrain wizard, Iron Major. Does a beautiful job with the terrain. So Iron Major, if you're watching this video, thank you, buddy. This battlefield looks amazing. So for my very first activation, I decided to activate my hunter Alicia Winters. Of course, I rolled my 2d6 and I add her strength. I am below 10, so because of this, Alicia will be able to act normally in this round. And for activations, I do a double series of movements up the gangplank there to the second floor of the Oak Branch building, as you can see on the left-hand side of the battlefield. My plan is actually have her go towards that window there, so that way she can put down some over long range fire with her long rifle, so that way she can kind of cover my left-hand flank from the Corpse Grinders. Up next, my friend Dark Lord Mac decides to do a group activation with both the 8-fold Harvest Lord as well as his Warp Horror, and that guy actually gets Snake Eyes twice in a row for both the Warp Horror as well as for the 8-fold Harvest Lords. They can both act normally as well. I was hoping that he would actually trigger like some infighting with the 8-fold Harvest Lord charging directly into the Warp Horror or vice versa. That would have been hilarious to watch that happen, but unfortunately the dice survived this time around. Regardless, both fighters move across a gangplank that connects the the Oak Ridge chemical tower right there in the middle of the tower, directly towards the sniper perch. They cross that gangplank directly onto that tower, making their way directly towards the metro terminal, which is located in the middle of the battlefield. So for my next activation, I activate Shroom and I roll my 2d6, and unfortunately I do roll, I believe, an 11, so because I do have to spend this entire turn having Shroom move closest towards the enemy as quickly as possible, because that is the bloodlust rules that we have going on in this particular scenario. So as you can see, I used Shroom's grapnel launcher to do a double move to move vertically up 12 inches directly to the second floor of the metro terminal, so that way he can make his way directly towards the enemy fighters. And unfortunately I have to do that because of the bloodlust rules. Meanwhile, on the left-hand side of the battlefield, my buddy Dark Lord Mac does a group activation with both Rictus as well as Griver. He actually rolls his 2d6 on that one, rolled a 10 roughly for these guys, so because of that, they will have to spend the entire turn moving as quick as they can towards my forces. And that's exactly what they do. They do double movements across that pontoon bridge on the left-hand side of the battlefield, heading directly towards the office building that Elysian Winters is setting up at. And that's actually kind of working to my advantage, because that was my plan. My plan was to actually put fire overwatch on that pontoon bridge and shoot anybody that tries to go over. If I can't wound these corpse grinders, at least I can make them fail another shift test, so if they fail, they fall directly into the drink. And if they do, of course, they automatically go out of action, which is only good for me. I then roll for Helios Hex, my 2d6, and unfortunately I do fail my Bloodlust, so because that Helios Hex must move as quickly as he possibly can towards the nearest enemy fighter. So because of that, I do a double action once again with Helios Hex, using his grapnel launcher to move 12 inches across the sum directly onto that little bridge walkway, so that way he can make his way directly up the tower, so that way he can fight the corpse grinders on the top of it. And unfortunately I have to do that because of the Bloodlust rules. So for Dark Lord next activation, he activates a group activation with Corpses Colossus as well as Death Wears a Smile. He rolls a 2d6 for both of these fighters and actually rolls below a 10 in addition to their strength, so the dice rolls are really lucky for this one, so because he gets to move these guys anywhere he wants. And both fighters do a double series of movements to move along that pontoon bridge, as you can see there on the back side of the table. The reason why he's going that direction is so that way he can flank on the right hand side of the battlefield, try to flank around me as well, so I do have to worry about that coming towards me. So for next activation, I do group activation with Crack Orc Slayer as well as Shin Messiah. I roll my 2d6 to both of my fighters, and I roll beneath a 10 for both of them. So because I got quite lucky with that, so I can move these guys normally. And for them, they head to the right-hand side directly toward this collapsing office building, doing double movements to climb directly to the second floor. And the reason why is because there is a bridge, you can see there in the top center screen, that can make my way directly to the right-hand side of the battlefield to intercept any corpse grinder cultists that are coming my way. So with that, we go to my buddy Dark Lord Mac's next activation, and we do make two mistakes in this particular picture. The first mistake is what I made. At the beginning of this battle report, I told you that one of the initiatives was Molech. I was incorrect on that. The guy taking point is actually an initiate named Zest the Mucker. He's armed with an auto pistol with mansharper rounds as well as a butcher cleaver. So that's the first mistake we made here. The second mistake that we made, of course, is that my buddy does a group activation with Motionless and White. Now, unfortunately for him, he thought at the time that he had commanding presence for his leader. What he actually had was mentor skills when he ended up having instead. So he did a little bit more of a mistake because he did a larger group activation than he was supposed to, but that's okay though. We're only playing for $15,000. It's a friendly game, so it's okay. We made that rules mistake before. It's not a really big deal. We're just playing for fun anyways. Regardless though, all four fighters do move up their double moon allowance across that bridge, trestle bridge, directly to the walkway, heading directly into the center of the battlefield where the metro tower is located at. He rolled a 2d6 for each of his fighters and rolled below 10 for all four of these guys. The dice are insane this round for my buddy Dark Lord Mac. He just did really, really good with his dice rolling really, really low for his fighters, so that way they can control themselves, which is kind of rare for corpse grinder cultists, but needless to say, that's exactly what happened. So with that, the rest of the round is actually dedicated to my fighters because Dark Lord Mac has activated all of his fighters at this point. So for my next activation, I do a group activation in Thor Onyx Blade as well as Lobo Loomis. I roll for both of these fighters and I do a great job rolling really low, so because I do roll under 10, so I get to move these guys normally. And I do apologize for the blurriness of this photo. I did not recognize that it was this blurry until now doing the post-production, so I do apologize for that. But either way though, Lobo Loomis as well as Thor Onyx Blade both do double movements down the walkway directly towards the foxhole and heading directly to the second floor of that office building as well, joining up with Crag Orc Slayer as well as Shin Messiah. So for our next activation, I do a group activation with Tiberius Cage as well as UR025. And unfortunately, I start off with UR025 and the intrusive thoughts entered his mind. He rolled a 14 on this one, which means that he must charge the nearest fighter closest to him, whether it is friend or foe. And unfortunately for me, the closest fighter to him is my leader, Tiberius Cage. So needless to say, he goes directly into Tiberius' cage and attacks him with his power claw, and unfortunately rolled a 6 to wound, and I was unable to armor save it, so because it cost 3 damage, knocked off all 3 wounds on my leader. He goes crashing face down to the cold hard decking, and of course rolls an injury dice and rolls an out of action result. So just like that, UR025 has taken out my leader, his own leader of his own gang as well. Luckily it's an out of action result, so it's not that bad. I can make a full recover afterwards, but just like that, my most powerful shooter and fighter in my gang has been taken out by one of his own as well. Now there is a bonus to this, there is a silver lining to this horrible thing that just took place, and that is your UR025 actually just earned 3 experience points for this, taking a fighter out of action as well as getting a bonus experience point for taking out my leader. So I guess that's a positive. Clint Tombstone does pass his cool check, but when it comes to his activation, he rolls boxcars, so apparently he gets violent as well. And looking at UR025, it says, "How dare you do this to our leader?" So because that, he must charge into my Iron Automata. And unfortunately, Clint Tombstone does nothing, absolutely nothing against UR025, and UR025 gets a counterattack with his Assault Claw, and of course managed to put the hurt directly down onto Clint Tombstone. He gets taken out of action with an out cold result as well. So just like that, I lost 2 of my fighters to friendly fire, to UR025, and I'm thinking now that maybe bringing this high strength Iron Automata with me was not such a great idea. So yeah, things are not that great right now. I just lost 2 of my own fighters to friendly fire. And with that, we go directly to the end phase. Luckily for me, though, I did pass my bottle test, so no harm, no foul as well. But I am losing 2 of my fighters already to UR025, so that part is tragic. I do have fighters going up to the office building on the right-hand side to try to outflank the Corpse Grinders, as well as Alicia's Winter on the left-hand flank to stop anybody from coming over with some covering fire. And I also have fighters in the center of the Metro Tower. But unfortunately, though, I think this is not going too well for me, so that part was kind of rough. Losing my leader like that and turn around the game was devastating. So with that being said, we're going directly to the top of turn number 2, and both Dark Lord Mac and I roll for initiative to see which of us will be going first. So we go directly to the top of turn number 2, and once again, the Corpse Grinder Cultist managed to get the initiative on this one, so my buddy Dark Lord Mac will be going first. So for his very first activation, he does a group activation with the 8-fold Harvest Lord as well as the Warp Horror. And luckily for him, though, he rolled a 10 for both of those fighters when he got that. Actually, I believe it was like an 11 as well as a 12, I believe. So because of these 2 fighters must spend their entire turn moving as quickly as they can towards the closest enemy fighters. So as you can see, the Warp Horror does a double movement directly to the center of the Metro Tower, followed closely behind by the 8-fold Harvest Lord, and that puts them directly on top of the tower, which is kind of good for them because that means I have to go up to them to fight them, which could put me at a disadvantage because I can't charge at them in close combat. Hopefully, though, I can hit those guys with some incendiary charges, which makes them run off the roof of the building. That would be fantastic, but we'll have to see what ends up happening. So I then activate Alicia Winters, and luckily for me, though, she does pass her strength test, so she does avoid the intrusive thoughts that are entering mine, and I decide to actually have her take a shot with her long rifle directly towards the fighters coming across the bridge on the left-hand side on that pontoon bridge. I do pass my willpower test, so that's perfectly fine. I take a basic action to aim as well. Now, luckily for me, in combination with the infra sight as well as the long-range modifier from her gun, as well as a +1 to hit she gets for taking a basic action to aim, it does mitigate the -2 to hit against, caused by the environmental conditions of the scenario. So I open fire directly into Griver, managed to roll a 6 on the wound on that one, so knockback does kick in and actually put that fighter out of action with the out cold results. So because of that, he will be making a full recovery at the end of the battle report. Unfortunately for my friend Dark Lord Mac, though, Rictus, his cutter does fail his cool test, so because he does flee back a handful of inches directly the way he came, which pretty much locks down and secures my left-hand flank from any threats. So jumping back to the other side of the table for my friend Dark Lord Mac, he rolls his 2d6 for both Death Birds of Smile as well as for Corpse's Colossus. And luckily for him, though, he did roll, I believe, a little over a 10, but not enough to actually trigger the 14 results. Because that, these guys must spend their entire turn moving as quick as they can towards the closest enemy fighters. And that's exactly what they decided to do. As you can see, they both do move actions along those pontoon bridges, making their way directly to the right-hand side of the battlefield as well. So that part is just working out great for my buddy Dark Lord Mac. And then once again, disaster strikes. The voices start to make sense inside of UR025's head, and he decides to fail his bloodlust test. I rolled like an 11, and then combined with his strength 4 puts him at a 15. So that part was horrific. And the reason why I activated this fighter is because from his vantage point, I could actually see the Warp Horror. So my plan was to open fire with his assault cannon, so that way he could at least pin the Warp Horror, if not, kill it outright. But unfortunately, I failed my bloodlust test, so because of that, UR025 must charge the closest fighter, either it was a friend or foe. And unfortunately, it was a friend. He goes directly into Thor Onyx Blade, getting 3 attacks at Strength 5 with his Assault Claw with -1 AP. Oh my god. So he just starts to decide to pull the pain directly onto Thor Onyx Blade, one of my champions. And as you can see, he has no problem whatsoever taking out Thor Onyx Blade. Now, he didn't fall into the drink. He actually fell right on top of the foxhole, but I just couldn't put the miniature up there and balance the dice at the same time, so because I just kind of put him off to the side. But Thor Onyx Blade does go out of action. I lose my 3rd fighter of the match so far, and he suffers an old battle wound, which means every single time he goes into battle report, I have to roll a d6 for him to see if he can make it. If I roll low, if I roll bad, he will not be able to participate because his old injury is acting up. And if you'll notice, there's no other fighters there on the foxhole because unfortunately they all failed their cool test. Crag Arcslayer flees directly into the corner of the office building because he just can't believe what he just witnessed. UR025 basically crushing Thor Onyx Blade's head with that assault claw of his. And both Shin Bisaya as well as Lobo Loomis, they also decided to run as well, and directly the 2nd floor to get away from UR025 because they don't want to die. And just like that, my entire right-hand flank has collapsed because now my fighters can't do anything else but quiver in the darkness, praying that my Iron Automata doesn't go after them. So yeah, this battle port is going great. So once again, my friend Dark Lord Mac does make a rules mistake, and I do as well. I'm under the assumption that Motionless and White does have commanding presence, so we do apologize for that. But anyway, so she decides to do a group activation with her 3 fighters, with Zest the Mucker, as well as the Crucifier, as well as the Toe Cutter. The Zest the Mucker, as well as the Crucifier, both pass their D6 rolls, their Bloodlust rolls, so they act normally. Zest the Mucker does a move activation directly towards the center of the Metro Terminal, and then of course the Crucifier also does a simple action move forward and a basic action open fire with his Harpoon Launcher directly into Helios Hex. Helios Hex is actually directly right across from the Metro Tower on that landing platform on the other side where Helios Hex is standing. Now, the Crucifier does manage to hit Helios Hex, but he fails to wound him. But either way, though, I do have to take an initiative test, and unfortunately, I failed my initiative test. So just like that, Helios Hex goes falling directly into the sump and automatically goes out of action. We rolled up for his lasting injury. He actually rolled an out cold result, so that was actually quite lucky for me, because no harm, no foul for Helios Hex. But at the same time, though, my fighter cannot participate in this battle report, so that part was horrific. However, what was not horrific, however, was that the Toe Cutter failed his Bloodlust test. Dark Lord Mac rolled boxcars on that guy, so because of that, the Toe Cutter must charge the closest fighter to him, no matter if it's a friend or a foe, and that fighter, of course, is Motionless and White. So with a Frothing Fury, the Toe Cutter charges directly into Emotionless and White, actually gets base-to-base contact with her, which actually kind of works out for Dark Lord Mac, for his leader anyways, because he actually gets a -1 hit against his base contact because he is using a Chain Glaive, and he launches his attacks against Motionless and White. Unfortunately for me, the Toe Cutter, of course, just whiffs his fight. He actually just whiffs his rolls on that one, so he doesn't actually do anything against Motionless and White. Motionless and White, however, she counterattacks back with her paired heavy chain cleavers and has no problem whatsoever putting the Toe Cutter down and putting an out cold result on him as well, which is actually quite lucky for my buddy Dark Lord Mac. It could have been much worse with a lasting injury that could have really done some damage, but luckily for him, though, just an out cold result was actually rolled. And this also shows why Motionless and White is the boss of this cult. And for the rest of her activation, she also does a move action directly towards the central terminal, the Metro Terminal right in the middle of the battlefield, so that way she can start climbing that tower and engaging my forces on the other side. So for my next activation, I activate Shroom. When I roll my 2d6, unfortunately I rolled like I think a 13 was my total, so because I just barely passed my Bloodlust test, but he does have to move as quick as he can to the closest enemy fighter. So brave little Shroom with his chainsword decides to use his grapple launcher to go directly to the top of the Metro Terminal. And as you can see, he is facing down both a Warp Horror as well as a full Harvest Lord, because apparently he is much more confident in his abilities than I am in him. So that part was kind of rough. And with that, that takes directly to the end phase. As you can see, my forces on the right-hand side have completely scattered because UR025 thinks that friendly fire is a fun thing to do. And at the same time, of course, the rest of the fighters are moving across towards the central Metro Terminal that I got to worry about with those corpse grinders. And unfortunately for me, I do fail my bottle test, which is to be expected. After all, I just lost, I believe, 4 fighters in my gang, so because of that, my people will need to take cool tests at the beginning of the next turn to see if they actually stick around. So that part is tragic. Meanwhile, in the recovery phase, Rictus does manage to get his coolback, so because he does earn an additional bonus point for experience and does 180 degrees to continue on his crossing on that pontoon bridge. Crag Arcslayer also managed to recover his cool as well, earning himself an additional bonus point for experience, which is kind of nice. And the exact same thing happens for Shin Basaya as well as Lobo Loomis. Both of them are guaranteed to regain their cool, so they also earn bonus experience points as well. So that being said, we go directly to the top of turn number 3, and both Dark Lord Mac and I roll off for initiative to see which of us will be going first. So that takes directly to the top of turn number 3, and the Corpse Grinder Cult managed to get the initiative on this one, so because that Dark Lord Mac will be going first. And for his very first activation, he decides to activate the Harvest Lord, and because of that, he does roll his 2d6 and manage to pass his Bloodlust test. Because of that, he declares a charge directly against Shroom. And of course, he has no problem whatsoever making that distance across the battlefield, that gangplank directly into Shroom, so the two of them do square down, and I just know that my little guy is not going to be able to make it against this dude. And of course, the A4 Harvest Lord does exactly what he does. He decides to harvest the life out of poor Shroom, actually puts him out of action as well, and puts a convalescence injury on him as well. So luckily for me, I will be able to make a full recovery with Shroom. He just won't be able to take any post-action battle sequences, but you know, it could have been much, much worse. He could have lost limbs, he could have killed him. There's a variety of horrible things that could have happened to poor Shroom. So continuing on with that group activation, the Warp Horde decides to go next, and when he rolls for his result, I believe he rolls a 12 in combination with his strength, so because he must move as quickly as he can towards the closest enemy fighter. So the Warp Horde does a move activation directly to the second floor of the Metro Terminal on that little gangplank, making his way directly towards the rest of my main body. So I then decided to activate Elysia Winters, and unfortunately I rolled boxcars for my roll on that part, so that part was really horrible. And because there is nobody for her, and that triggers the Bloodlust Bar, which means she must charge the nearest enemy fighter or friendly fighter, whoever is closest. Now, unfortunately there's a caveat for that rule. If there is no nearby fighters, what ends up happening is that your character actually does self-harm by attacking themselves. So unfortunately I have to roll an injury dice to see exactly what happens to Elysia Winters. And disaster strikes. I rolled an out of action result for her, so apparently she decided to smash her head against the cold hard ground, and because of that she gets an out cold result, which is really lucky because I could have gotten a serious injury on this one instead, a lasting injury instead, so I was extremely lucky on that one. And this battle report's kind of weird because I've been kind of lucky with my injury rolls, but been horribly unlucky when it comes to my self-control tests, so that was horrible. And because I don't want to lose any more fighters that I currently have in this battle report, I decided to get on when the getting is good, so I decided to heli on and decide to surrender in this battle report, conceding victory to my buddy Dark Lord Mac. So just like that, the Corpse Grinder Cults managed to get the victory on this one, and with that being said, we're going to go directly to the after action report, because this battle report is now officially over.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.
So now it's time for the after action report, starting with the post game for my gang, the Bloodmoon Hunters of the Venators. I usually don't lose very often, but when it does sting. So because of that, let's talk about exactly what happened to my gang at the end of this battle report. So first of all, let's go over injuries. So I lost Tiberius Cage, Elysia Winters, Helios Hex, as well as Clint Tombstone. But luckily for me though, all those fighters made a full recovery because I rolled out cold results for those characters. So extremely lucky. That could have gone completely sideways on me as well. At the same time, Shroom also makes a full recovery as well because he rolled a convalescence injury during the battle. So he will not be able to take any post-action battle sequences, but he'll make a full recovery that way. So no harm, no foul there. As for my champion, Indithor Onyx Blade, though, he does roll up an old battle wound, so he does make a full recovery. But what ends up happening is that anytime I want to field him in future battle reports, I do have to roll a d6. If I roll a 1, that means his old injury is acting up again, and he will not be able to participate, which is actually quite lucky because I should only trigger once every 6 battles or so, so hopefully it doesn't trigger, but if it does though, it could have been a lot worse. At the same time, I do have a couple of my fighters who do advance. Crag Orcslayer actually leveled up to level 1 as well, and I decided to actually spend his experience points to increase his movement allowance. So now he has movement 5 inches instead of 4 inches, so that way he's pretty swift, so that part is fantastic. Elysia Winters also levels up to level 1 as well, and when I rolled for her, because I have to do so because she's a ganger and her upgrades are random, I rolled a +1 to her toughness, which is actually fantastic. So now she's toughness 4, makes it a little bit more survivable, and I also increased her credit value by 30 credits in total. The one who actually achieved the most advancements is UR025. He actually leveled to level 3, if you can believe it. And so because he does actually get a lot of bonuses for that one. He actually gets +1 to his willpower, so that way he's willpower 7. At the same time, he also chose the headbutt skill, so that way he gets a free attack in close combat as well, which also increases his value by additional 25 credits. So that part is fantastic. Granted, he did advance because he did spill the blood of his own friends, but you know, you take what you can get. So for my territories, for my settlement, I managed to recruit 2 new hunters. Now the reason why I was able to get 2 hunters this time around is because of the campaign Fleeting Utopia, which basically means that any kind of rewards are given out by territories, in terms of manpower anyways, you get twice as many fighters this time around. So because I got 2 fighters, I got Rouse as well as Ryan. Both those guys have characteristic number 4 on the from the book of the Outlands. And the reason why that's the case is because whenever I recruit fighters this way for Venators anyways, if I get them randomly given to me from my territory, what I do is I roll a d4 to determine which of the characteristics they actually get. So that part is kind of cool. They also come with 25 credits worth of equipment as well. So because of that, Rouse comes in with a grapnel launcher, while Ryan comes in with a set of mesh armor as well as a stub gun with dum-dum rounds. I also managed to drum up 50 credits from that territory as well. For my Underhive Shrine, Crag Orcslayer, Jinx, Shroom, Piper Kruger, Shim Basaya, UR025, Rain, Rouse, and Elucia Vane. If you don't know who that fighter is, I'll talk about her in a second. All those guys got +1 to their armor saves from that territory because I rolled a 6 for those guys, so that was fantastic. And I also managed to drum up 40 credits. So they'll get +1 to the armor saves in the next battle report, but then after that, it will go away. Now, from the Ashgate territory that I have, I recruited 2 new hunters. I named those guys Janice Drake as well as Elucia Vane. I rolled for their characteristics as well. Janice Drake's got the number 1 set of characteristics for him, and Elucia Vane rolled the number 3 characteristics for her character as well. I also managed to raise up 110 credits from that territory as well. And then for my Hab level, because I lost 3 times as many fighters as the Corpse Grinder Cultists, I did lose my Hab level, so because that Soylent Green managed to capture that territory from my gang. So with that, we got my Dramatic Victorium level. I managed to get a Crute Long Rifle for Ryan, because I managed to get 30 credits worth of equipment from the training post whenever that territory. I also managed to get Frag Grenades for Rouse as well, because it doubles the benefit this current campaign week. I also managed to raise 30 credits from that territory. And then for my Slave Pits, Crag Orcslayer earned 3 additional experience points. So did Clem's Tombstone with 2 additional experience points. Piper Kruger also learned 3 extra experience points. Ryan got 3+ in his experience. Janice Drake +2, and Elucia Vane +2 experience as well, because I rolled D6 for all the fighters on my list. All these guys rolled a 6, so I got D3 additional experience points. And at the same time, also managed to drum up 30 credits from that territory. So let's talk about the trading posts. So I managed to get 260 credits from my territories, and when combined with the 30 credits that I got from my stash, they gave me 290 credits in total. I spent a large portion of those credits on my newly recruited hunters, and that gave me 15 credits left over, which I pasted directly into my stash. So here's the latest additions to my gang. I have Janice Drake, who is a hunter. He's got 2 experience points, costs 145 credits. As you can see, he's got the number 1 characteristics for a hunter there on the left-hand side. I also purchased for him mesh armor, as well as a power sword, a last pistol that's also got a hot shot last pack. So this guy is getting out for close combat goodness. And here is Elucia Vane, my second hunter that I managed to recruit. She has 2 experience points and costs 145 credits. As you can see, she has characteristic number 3, which means she's got 3+ weapon skill as well as 4 up toughness, so it makes her a little bit more survivable in close combat. She also has mesh armor for a 5 up armor save, as well as a power sword and a last pistol with a hot shot last pack attached to that. And here's my other hunter, Ryan, which I managed to recruit. He got 3 experience points, and he costs 105 credits. He also got the number 4 characteristics, which means he's got 3+ for ballistic skill, which makes him a better shooter. And besides that, I gave him mesh armor for a 5 armor save. I gave him the Crute Long Rifle for my Mana Victorium, so that way he got some really good long range shooting as well as some good close combat. He's also got a stub gun with dum-dum rounds as a backup weapon. And lastly, here's Rouse, my last hunter that I managed to recruit. He's got 3 experience points as well as costs 105 credits. He's also got characteristic number 4, which gives him shooting stats on the left-hand side. I gave him mesh armor for 5 armor save, as well as an auto pistol, the manstopper rounds for a shooting attack. I also gave him frag grenades as well as a demo charge, so just in case I got to do any kind of missions that require any heavy demolitions. And he also has a grapnel launcher to help him rocket around the battlefield as well. So for reputation, I got plus reputation for the campaign week, as well as another point of reputation for having the hard as nails benefit for being unaligned. Unfortunately, I did battle out in this battle reports because I did lose 1 point reputation, which brings my grand total reputation to 17. My current record now is at 3 wins as well as 1 loss, and my new gang rank now is at 3,835 points. So up next, let's talk about Soylent Green of the Corpse Grinder cult, played by my buddy Dark Lord Mac. He managed to pull the victory on this one, so let's talk about exactly what happened to his fighters in the postgame. So for injuries on this one, he did lose 2 of his fighters, the Toe Cutter as well as Griver, but both those guys made out cold results for their injuries, so they made full recoveries, so no harm, no foul for those fighters. So in the postgame, a couple of advances did happen for his fighters. First of all, Motionless and White actually leveled to level 1, and she decided to choose the Commanding Presence skill. And this is when we realized that we made rules errors in the battle report. It was okay though, it had minimal effect on the overall battle, but he now has the Commanding Presence ability on his leader. Originally he was trying to get Mentor originally, so he was looking at his fighter card and he said, oh wait a minute, I already have Mentor. And I was like, you do? And he goes, yeah. And we're like, oh my god. So he felt so bad for making that rules mistake, but that's okay though. These things happen in Necromunda. It's not a big deal. So because he decided to put Commanding Presence on his leader and increase her credit value by 20 credits, so now she'll be officially able to activate larger fighters on a legal basis. Up next is Rictus. Rictus also leveled to level 1 as well, and also increased his movement characteristic by 1 inch, and also increased his credit value by 10 credits, so now he has movement 6, which means that that guy can reach out and hit you potentially at, 15 inches with that rotary saw of his. Absolutely terrifying, so this guy's going to be an absolute wrecking machine in close combat. Griver also leveled up to level 1 as well, and when they rolled for his advancement on the Ganger advancement chart, he actually decided to do a parry skill. He decided to do. He is a specialist, so he's able to choose his advancements and decided to learn the parry skill for that one, so that way he's a little bit more survivable in close combat with some defensive abilities. And the Crucifier also leveled to level 1 as well, and when they rolled for his advancement, he actually rolled Specialist on this one, so he becomes a Specialist, and he decided to learn the parry skill, make it a little bit more survivable in close combat as well, and also increase his credit value by 20 credits as well. From his territories, from his Chaos Feint territory, managed to drum up 40 credits from that. Unfortunately, wasn't able to recruit anybody for that one, so his game didn't get any larger than that. But from his Gilder Stronghold, however, he did manage to recruit 2 new Skinners named Calamar, the Gene Hacker, as well as Pale Alcaius. Both those guys are armed with plate mail armor, as well as Skinner Mask, and the automatic, they both come with paired boning swords. And they also managed to drum up 50 credits from that territory. From his settlement, he also managed to recruit 2 new Initiates named Sinus the Sliver, as well as Mal Albalat. Both those guys are armed with flak armor, Initiates masks. They also got stub guns as well as boning swords, and also managed to drum up 40 credits from that territory. So continuing on this territories, from his manufactorium level, managed to get 2 sets of armored undersuits as well as 2 sets of dum-dum rounds, because you get double the benefits that we get from this round from fleeing Utopia. He also managed to drum up 50 credits in income from that territory. From the Hab level, he managed to capture that from my gang by putting 3 times as many injuries out in my gang than I did to him. So he managed to capture that one. Managed to increase his reputation by 5 points, and also managed to drum up 60 credits from that territory as well. So for the trading post, he managed to drum up 240 credits from his territories, as well as combining with the 60 credits he had in his stash, gave him 300 credits in total. And with those 300 credits in total, he also decided to do some purchases. We'll talk about those in a second. And he also gave the armored undersuits that he got from his Mandatorium level to both Motionless and White, as well as the People Eater, to increase their armor value. So with his credits for Calamar the Gene Hacker, which is his Skinner, this is the guy that he recruited from one of his territories. As you can see, he's also got paired boning swords. He's also got a Berserker skill, as well as a Specialist special rule. And here's a close-up of Pale Alcaius, which is a Skinner that he also recruited as well, who's also got Skinner's Mask, plate mail armor, as well as paired boning swords. He's also got the Berserker skill, as well as the Specialist special rule. And if you notice, these 2 fighters are, in fact, I believe they're called Blood Warriors, I think is what they're called, from Warhammer Age of Sigmar. Now you might be thinking, Commander Cheapskate, why are you using Age of Sigmar miniatures from Necromunda? Because the name is Commander Cheapskate. I'm not buying miniatures if I don't have to. So if this game gets any larger, we're just actually going to use some Age of Sigmar Blade of Corn characters in order to fill out the gang. And here's a close-up of Sinus the Sliver, which is one of his initiatives they managed to recruit. This guy's got flak armor, boning sword, as well as a stub gun with dum-dum rounds. That was one of the things he got from his Manufactorium level as well. He's also got the Infiltrate special skill. And here is Mal Albalat, which is his second initiative he managed to recruit as well. This guy's got flak armor, boning sword, a stub gun with dum-dum rounds. The dum-dum rounds came from his Manufactorium level, and he's also got the Infiltrate skill as well. And once again, these guys are also Blood Reavers, I believe they're called. They're also from Age of Sigmar, because we are cheapskates on this channel. Now, with the 300 credits he did manage to get from his territories, he decided to recruit a Warp Whore into his gang. This is the Korgorath, and yes, this is the same Korgorath that is from Age of Sigmar, because after all, this thing does look like a Warp Whore. I dare you to tell me that it doesn't. As you can see, it's got 2 horrific appendages. It also has Warp Fire Breath as well, so this thing does have a shooting attack. It's also got the Terrifying skill, as well as the Warp Denizen special rule, and it's also got the Nerves of Steel skill as well. So it is absolutely terrifying and horrific to look upon. So in the end, he managed to get 1 point of reputation from the campaign week, as well as 2 points of reputation from the scenario and 5 from his territories, giving a grand total of 14 points of reputation. His new record now is at 2 wins and 1 loss, and his new gang rating now is at 3,465 points. So there you guys have it. That is battle report number 13 of Season 2 of Meat for the Grinder down in the books. As always, please feel free to like, comment, and or subscribe. You guys' input is invaluable to us as always. Also check us out on Facebook, Instagram, as well as Wogga.com for all the latest greatest hobby news related to this channel. That's good for this week, guys. We'll catch you guys next one. Peace out and stay classy.